Okay. Okay, so I'm going to present WearGenix, which goes from smartwatch data streams to druggable genes. So first of all, let me tell you about the overall problem that we're addressing. We want to find drug targets for brain disease, and these are quite elusive. So as you all know, brain conditions are a big deal. There's roughly 100 million people in the United States that suffer from various neurological and neuropsychiatric conditions. And importantly, there's very strong evidence that a lot of these conditions are strongly linked to genetics. They're very heritable. In fact, say Alzheimer's and schizophrenia are over 2/3 heritable, and this is much more heritable than, say, heart disease or breast cancer. However, drug discovery for brain conditions is very difficult. And one of the simple reasons it's very hard to directly assay the living brain, obviously, but also, even though the conditions are very heritable, it's actually hard to link a specific gene to the conditions. And that's because there's a lot of variability in these conditions of the phenotype. And also, it's very hard to objectively define this. And because of that, we need very large cohorts, often 100,000, 1 million people, to study these conditions and to link genetic variants and genes to the conditions. And even when we do that, there's still a lot of misdiagnosis and heterogeneity. So we want to tackle this gap, and we want to better define brain conditions and brain phenotypes. And if we better define them, we think we can link them to genetics and genes better. And so we want to develop something we call a digital phenotype that's going to sit between the genetics and the disease. So our overall solution is to develop this AI-driven platform that's going to take raw smartwatch data from a smartwatch, which is very noisy and multi-channel complicated data, and kind of put it through our AI-driven processing platform and boil it down to a whole variety of interpretable features, and then correlate these features with genetics. And this is shown here where we have our deep learning model, and then here are some of the features that come out. So for instance, for a particular condition, ADHD, that we're going to look at in detail, you can see, for instance, heart rate is one of the most important features, much more important than, say, sleep. And actually, you can look at the different features during the day, and for instance, the afternoon is a much more important time for ADHD diagnosis than, say, in the middle of the night. So now that we've developed these features from our deep learning platform, we can correlate them with genetics. So first thing we want to do is kind of establish a baseline, and that's the kind of traditional way of doing GWAS, or genome-wide association studies. And here we're going to take a fairly small cohort of about 1,000 people for ADHD, and we're going to try to link the genes or the genetic variants to the condition, and we get essentially no loci we find. It's too small of a cohort. But if we take the digital phenotype, or the features that we define from the smartwatch data, we get a lot of loci. We get about 10 loci, and we can validate these loci very well by looking at much larger GWASs and lots of other data. So we get about 30-fold more statistical power. And the other important thing is, for a lot of these loci, we can actually interpret them, in terms of the digital phenotype. So for instance, this loci here, we can see it's related to sedentary time if you have ADHD. So we developed this platform recently, and it just came out. We published a paper, and it just came out in Cell this year. And now we think we're positioned to accelerate drug target discovery through developing these digital biomarkers. And we think also that our platform is very scalable to neurodegenerative diseases, addiction, other conditions, and so forth. And we've filed a provisional patent for this. And we, in terms of a business model, we basically see this in terms of just licensing. So we could see ourselves licensing the WearGenix platform to pharma companies and associated academics that have cohorts, and they're trying to use these to find drug targets. This would give them greater value from their cohorts. Conversely, we could also license it to tech companies that make the devices, which they want to make their devices more valuable and make them more readily sellable to drug companies and used in this way. So that's our kind of business model. And we've already had some initial interest from the pharma side and also from the tech side. So in terms of the specific accelerator award, what we'd like to do with the money is we'd like to take about 2/3 of it to make our pipeline more robust, and therefore we just need more GPU time to refine our software. And then we want to take the remaining stuff to get access to additional data for additional conditions such as Parkinson's, and also to store the intermediate results. And so here's our team. So we've got the key inventors of this, Jason and Beatrice, who are 2 postdocs in my lab. They're moving on soon to faculty positions. And we have clinical advice from people in the psychiatry department and a lot of help from Yale Ventures in terms of licensing and IP. And overall, our competitive edge we sort of see is that we know more about genetics than the tech company world, but we know more about AIs and biosensors than the pharma world. We kind of sit in between, and we have a kind of nice integration place. And that's our overall message. Thank you.